Hi, friends. I'll be very direct today, and yes, I'm running for Mobile County Sheriff, but let me tell you, I don't play about children, especially when it comes to physical or even sexual abuse. Stay tuned. This is part two of last week's episode where we all found out that the sheriff's office sent out a letter to an individual in Mobile County who was accused of essentially uploading what was described as child pornography, and I believe the letter alluded to sexual abuse. The letter went out to say that the sheriff's office would not prosecute, and the letter served as a warning. Again, I must reiterate that this is my opinion. This is about how leadership handles situations publicly. The podcast is not about presuming guilt or innocence with any person listed in that letter or letters, or whether the sheriff or deputies did anything wrong in terms of policy violations. Listen, it's about analyzing the situation based on public information and drawing conclusions about leadership and how this has been handled. I did not believe that was the first letter of its kind that had been sent out from the sheriff's office, and that I was most assured that the letter was a matter of practice. Letters of this magnitude are generally vetted through the chief of police, the sheriff, or other legal advisors, certainly within its agencies, to ensure compliance with the law, even possibly with the district attorney's office, because of the implications that such letter would simply make if determined or if it became public. If a crime has not been committed, then no such letter is or was warranted. If a crime has been committed, conversely, then the letters in the sheriff's office certainly deserve scrutiny. We originally discussed that WALA Fox 10 News here in Mobile contacted the sheriff's office several days ago about the letter due to it being circulated on social media, specifically Facebook. Birch did not think it was important enough to address the public, but rather had the public information officer release a statement that the letter simply was not authorized and that the detective was being proactive.
MCSO tells me the detective who sent out the letter wanted to be, quote, proactive, and this matter is now being handled internally. Live in Mobile, Natalie Williamson, Fox 10 News.
I can assure you, having served as the chief of police, that letter was most certainly authorized by the sheriff, and if it wasn't, it should have been. That letter being mailed out was either intentional or a matter of process, or it was simply negligence. Either scenario is an incompetence issue. This isn't to say Birch is a bad guy or a bad person. That's not the implication or what we're saying, but rather understanding the significance and scope of such letter and the overall job performance and accountability and the responsibility of the sheriff. Furthermore, on the Sean Sullivan Show, Birch stated that the statute of limitations had ran out for the crime. The News also interviewed a local prominent defense lawyer and disagreed with Birch in that depending on the specific offense and the date of the incident, that the statute of limitations had not run out. Watch the video.
The letter to defense attorney Chase Dearman. He tells me he doesn't know what to make of it.
Our law enforcement, especially our sheriff's department as well as the DA, take those crimes extremely seriously. I've done this for 25 years, criminal defense, and I have never read anything like that before.
During Birch's radio interview, he mentions the statute of limitations had run out on the offense. However, based on the letter, Dearman says that might not be the case.
If the crime occurred the date listed on the letter, that would not run afoul of a statute of limitations.
I would agree if the sheriff did not know, he should have known. It seems Birch is inept and he isn't prepared for prime time. If you don't have the answer, then you simply say you don't know. But perhaps fooling the people is a strategy as well. This isn't a case where a deputy lost his cool in the performance of his duties or the deputy intentionally or maliciously violated policy. In those scenarios, the sheriff can only respond to the matter and cannot always prevent nefarious behavior from deputies outside of his control. This is a matter, at least with these letters, are not the scenarios where a deputy lost their cool or violated policy. This investigator either followed the policy or he didn't. Let me remind you that there is no confirmation from the sheriff's office that a victim has even been identified, even today, or if the victim was in protective custody or what future efforts were going to be taken. Instead, Birch was initially silent until he went on the Sean Sullivan Show. That is not acceptable when it comes to matters involving children. The public demands to know, people need to know if someone's children or if their children or grandchildren are affiliated with a person that may be involved in such crime. After the last podcast was released last week, Birch did go on the Sean Sullivan Show on 106.5 News Talk. Listen to this.
Mobile County Sheriff's Office is mailing out warnings to sex offenders.
Well, that has been corrected. And in this particular incident, the statute of limitations had run on the offense. It was a one-time offense. And by the time, because there's a process, and I'm not going to reveal how we, get onto these type cases, but it was a one-time offense. By the time they got the data back to be able to do something, the statute of limitations had run. It was putting them on notice that we're watching. And so,
but that you're watching, that they're in our area.
We're aware of their activity. Like I said, it was a one-time, deal that they went into a site they shouldn't have gone into, child pornography site. So,
oh wow!
Put them on notice. There were a couple of attempts made to knock on the door and have a in-person discussion, but nobody would come to the door, so they generated a letter. I was unaware they were doing that. That has been rectified, and it will not happen again.
So there's a list, and then it's cross-referenced with what this activity is.
Yes, they've only sent out a couple of those letters, thankfully, and the person who made that decision won't do it again.
Sullivan brought up the issue about the letter, and Birch acknowledged that several letters had been sent out and that it would not happen again. Birch stated presumably the person or at least listed in the letter that was circulated, had been clicking on sites and essentially ran across child pornography. Is it possible? I'm fairly confident the person, if found to be true, was searching, but nonetheless, the sheriff's office letter stated that the person was uploading, which in essence means sharing or creating and sharing content from the person's device through into the internet. Birch described essentially what means the person was downloading from the internet through into the person's device. Listen, in the world of litigation, the world of law enforcement, and the world of the judicial system, words matter. We then find out, after Birch did the Sean Sullivan Show, that another person came forward. Watch this.
Child pornography. The letter goes on to say detectives were unable to identify who uploaded the files, so the letter serves only as a notification and educational outreach to ensure the parent was aware of the reported activity and the importance of addressing online safety within the household. We spoke to the parent who got the letter. She says after reading it, she was shocked.
And I was like, I know that's not true because her accounts are hooked up to my phone, so I see everything. It was like a group chat with a whole bunch of kids just posting stuff in a group chat, but it wasn't specifically my daughter. It was just like normal teenage stuff. I never seen nothing like provocative in that group chat.
The letter says the date of occurrence was July 9th, 2025, and according to the mother, her daughter's Instagram account was disabled the next day. She tells me after receiving the letter, she immediately called the sheriff's office.
I even been trying to call the sheriff's office, and it's like, don't nobody want to say nothing.
This lady had received a similar letter. However, she has called multiple times, yet received no response. Imagine that. Those letters are so serious, no response. Why would no investigator respond back to the person? If that person is telling the truth and they tried to call and there's no reason to believe they didn't, why would an investigator not call them back with a letter of such implications? Who received one of those letters? These type of letters accusing someone in our society of these type crimes have huge social implications in our society, especially without context, and can ruin a person's reputation. While I believe and we should vigorously prosecute these type crimes, we should be professional enough to also understand that if the crime was not prosecutable, no such letter was warranted for the very reasons now where a letter was made public, but there's no prosecution. Perhaps someone's reputation has been marred. That's just my opinion. We don't know all the circumstances. Questions have to be answered. Was the content from kid to kid, as stated in the latter letter, which can happen with school-age kids being mischievous, that's what they do, or was this an adult, especially if that person was creating content with kids that he or she had access to, and that person uploaded that information or video? That's terrible. This is a leadership failure, whether intentional or negligence. It equals incompetence. I want to overstate that law enforcement officers or leaders in the profession do not have the authority to play judge or jury when determining charges would proceed through the courts. That type of discretion is not theirs to make. The sheriff's position in the state of Alabama is a very powerful position, but even he or she does not have that type of authority. That's not respecting the judicial process, my opinion. There are standards and requirements set by the state for clearing cases, and I'll just give you one simple example. If an investigator gets an investigation, they have to prove that the crime did in fact occur. It was committed. And if that a person has been identified who committed that crime, that case is put together and it is presented to the local district attorney's office, usually an assistant district attorney in the charging department. So, for example, to clear that case and not prosecute that case, but you have to close it, for that scenario and under the state policy, the detective would have to counsel with the district attorney's office, and that office would have to determine based on facts and merits if the case would move forward. Only then could that case be cleared and closed officially in that scenario. And then, of course, if that was the case, then maybe perhaps the letter would make sense, but I still don't quite understand why the letter exists. Church also stated in the Sean Sullivan Show that his office made several attempts to contact the individual in the first letter. I'm not sure that is a factual statement. Or maybe so, maybe he really did, who knows. But like many law enforcement agencies, Birch has a special operations team, larger than most agencies, my understanding somewhere between 30 and 40 deputies. They've been often referred to me as the Goon Squad because of their aggressive tactics. While that is hearsay, I cannot confirm that, other than what my sources have referred to them as. But the point of that is, if Birch has that many deputies simply for special operations and assignments, and I am sure the sheriff's office could have located that person unless the person left town, which we still don't know. But that is my response, because Birch simply said on the Sullivan Show they made several attempts to get in touch with the person, which is thus the reason the letter was sent out to begin with. I am not saying that the person in the letter did or did not do anything, or if that person is guilty or not guilty. And I'm not saying a detective did or did not violate policy or state law. That the point is that I'm making that our county sheriff did not think this matter required his immediate attention to address the public, especially dealing with kids in that regard. That should be concerning to all of Mobile County citizens. It's one thing to make a mistake at that level, and everyone does. However, mistakes at this level exposes incompetence at the highest levels of government. And of course, the citizens need real leadership, not on-the-job training. Perhaps Birch needs more executive experience. That's not a slight, that's a professional opinion. This is why I have spoken so much on the podcast about my leadership and certainly my experience and the results when I was the chief of police. My friends, experience matters. I just wanted to give a little clarity and context since the Sean Sullivan Show was aired. Some of you are going to say, well, Paul, you're just simply attacking the incumbent. Well, I have every right to compare my leadership style to his, how I would have handled it different. Someone on Facebook asked me that, and I gave a pretty lengthy answer. So I think this is probably a good time to say, how would you have handled it? It's one thing, my friends, for me to tell you, or at least critique how it was handled wrong. But the person on Facebook simply asked me, well, if you were the sheriff, how would you handle it? Well, first of all, I would have gathered all the facts. I would not have ignored the fact that that letter was a common practice. I think, for me, I would have went public. I would have done a press conference, and if the letters are lawful and they were for the intended use of letting people know we've seen some nefarious activity with your internet searches and those cases were not prosecuted, I think the public needs to know. Here's what the problem is. Everybody yells and hollers, we want transparency, but what does that really mean? Well, transparency really is giving you, the public, information we don't, as government officials, don't necessarily have to give. But I think it's important in this scenario. One, you've got a letter that's accusing someone that has a lot of social implications about child pornography and certainly sexual abuse of minors or children. That is huge. So I would have went to the public and simply gave a press conference and said, listen, at the end of the day, I don't need an internal affairs investigation to determine whether or not that letter was a matter of practice. I told you on the podcast before we heard that many letters have been sent out. I guarantee you what you're going to find out is that letter is a matter of practice. Somebody approved that letter. The sheriff knew or should have known as a leader. That's having the wherewithal and the understanding of the major accountability responsibility you have as a leader of that organization. Now, if the letter was not approved, then Birch should have simply come up and said, this letter is not approved, but he should have been able to make that statement when the news channel went to his office. He should have been able to go public and be emphatic. That letter was not a matter of practice. It is not a matter of policy on this agency, and we'll get to the bottom of it, and we'll keep you, the public, posted. He didn't do that, and I'm pretty confident he didn't do that because it is a matter of practice. And the reality is, if he says it's not, then he's probably going to have a whole bunch of people in that ICAC unit that's going to be mad. And he takes, especially during election time, he takes the responsibility, or at least the worry of some of these people coming out against him if he says it wasn't. That leader should have known. Go public, tell the people what you know. And I understand, maybe I read somewhere that the state police is doing something to this nature. I don't know. And a lot of times these letters kind of mirror what some of the other agencies do. Not saying it's not lawful. Maybe that's why there was not any real statute or offense quoted in the letter. But nonetheless, that letter got out. And if that person has not been charged or guilty of a crime, there are social implications that the people will now stigmatize that person. And this isn't plausibility for innocence. That's not the point I'm making. The point I am simply making is, as professionals, we have to understand that. I'd have held a press conference. I'd have told the public, here's why we use the letters. And now we know there's two letters. Mr. and Mrs. Citizen, this is why we do these. We don't have the merits. We don't have the facts. We don't have, for many reasons, enough to be able to charge an individual. And this is why this particular letter went out versus the second letter that came public that talks about children. Children are going to be children, especially those that now have phones in middle and high school. They're going to spread and share that content around sometimes, right? And but that's typically inappropriate pictures of friends or friends of friends that they go to school with or to another school. But we're talking about, and those are considered child pornography because they're minors. But when I think the public hears about child pornography, they're thinking the most extreme cases involving sexual abuse, or at least that's how I look at it, and involving toddlers or minors. But when you give an adult a letter of that, and you said you've been involved in uploading this kind of content, you know, there deserves an investigation to be out there. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And I think simply coming out and tell the people, I don't, listen, let me say this. I don't even know that I would warrant such letter in any circumstances. I'm just going to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, if we have material facts that says somebody committed a crime, it is the responsibility of that agency to investigate that matter and then bring that person to justice, if that be the case. Okay? I understand that, you know, barring, you know, child mischief and children doing what they do, parents need to be more involved. I completely get it. But nevertheless, we have now a case that has been aired on social media. We don't know if that person was involved, and there's children involved. Friends of friends or family or relatives that may be allowing a person to babysit children. Because when you put in your letter that you were uploading, and I explained that just a minute ago, versus what the sheriff said on the Sullivan Show, which is you're just scouring the internet and searching and clicking, my understanding, that's downloading. So we're getting conflicting information. And then, of course, you heard the sheriff say the statute of limitations have ran out. But how do you say that when there was no specific offense listed? And I don't know that there is a statute of limitation on sexual abuse cases of such. And, of course, you heard the words of a prominent lawyer and his opinion. I'm just simply saying this, that, you know, we can't just tell the public what they think they want to hear. Sometimes real leaders have to get up, and the public doesn't understand if the letter is legitimate and we're complying with the law and sending these type letters out. While the public may not accept it or agree with it, because I still can't get my head wrapped around why we would send such a letter out. Transparency is that you get up there and you tell the people that, and then if you need to tweak or you need to change policy as a result of it, then you do it evidence-based, and that's with counsel, with the district attorney's office, and certainly the legal advisors, and I believe the sheriff's office has too. So listen, that's my position. It's easy for me to Monday morning quarterback. I'm not sitting in the seat. I don't have all the information, and I just want to simply say this. I hope that the deputies or the supervisors involved in this are not going to take the fall for something that the leader knew was going on or the leader should have known was going on. And I think that's going to be problematic if that turns out to be the case. But simply denying that you know anything because it's election time, that's disingenuous to you, the voter. It's easy for me to do it, right? But I've been in that position. And just like the current sheriff, the incumbent, my record is up for display as well, including the litigation and all the political hit job, in my opinion, that was done on me while I was the sitting chief of the city of Mobile. Use it, bring it out, because facts and truth never changes. Only lies change from story to story to story. My friends, thank you again for visiting. Listen, we really need to share the podcast. We want to get this information out to the general public for Mobile County. People need to know who they're voting for, not just because of a nice smile, and I think I have a nice smile, not just because of what you think someone's public reputation is. Listen, I'm doing this podcast so I can tell you, the voter, my leadership style, how I think, my processes, and then you have to determine whether or not, hey, that's a person I can get behind. That's a person of integrity and character, and that's going to uphold the rule of law. Listen, my friends, thanks again for tuning in. And as I always say, Lord willing, the creek don't rise. We'll see you again on the next episode. God bless.